This is episode 739 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing.
And I'm Wally Drangmeister.
I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. Wally, hope you had a good, relaxing Labor Day.
I did. I got to spend some time with my granddaughter whose birthday's coming up and got to go fishing. So there's very few weekends that have more of the things I like to do than that one. So
Very nice. Well, I have to admit, Labor Day, among the one-off one-day holidays,
yeah.
is one of my very favorites because you have zero obligations.
Yes.
There's nothing, no expectation. You don't have to go rally against the millionaires and billionaires of New Mexico like some folks did.
Yeah, some people feel obligated. We do not.
Yeah, I also enjoy the fact that it's right at that precipice between the hot heat of the summer and the impending, in my opinion, best weather of the year. Best weather almost anywhere, fall in New Mexico.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Paul, as you mentioned that, I noticed just a little bit cooler in the morning and the evening. And so it's like, yes, it was nice weather and a great place for Labor Day. Now, the spring, maybe not always as much, but the fall's just fantastic.
Yeah, and while I was out of town for much of last week, I know we got some rain here in the metro area. Water is in the Rio Grande, which is a good thing. We certainly need another good monsoon storm or two before that season concludes. But to recap my travels, I was in New Orleans, Louisiana for the annual State Policy Network conference. Been to these for many, many years, even before I began with the Rio Grande Foundation. I, very close to the time of Hurricane Katrina. That was 20 years ago. One of probably other than the Iraq War, seminal events, and obviously 9/11 of the George W. Bush administration. Certainly Hurricane Katrina. New Orleans, it's a interesting town. Had a chance to be there around the French Quarter. Nobody would ever believe that 20 years ago the city was devastated like that. Did get to see and visit with former PED Secretary Hanna Skandera there. She's in the philanthropy side on the education reform, no longer having to go through committee hearings and whatnot. And it was good to catch up with her. A lot of great people at the event reforming state economies in a free market direction from all over the country. Really big, well-attended conference, and there's kind of a limited number of cities they can even have them in. So New Orleans is a little bit on the humid side, but it is also cooling down even in the Big Easy. So that was my trip out to New Orleans.
Well, I do like New Orleans, and if you know anything about its layout, it's amazing it's still there. Paul, and when I was at New Mexico State, 79 to 83, I had a geology professor that said, in his opinion, New Orleans would be underwater in our lifetime, and Katrina kind of proved that it was a bad situation. But yeah, you go there and. I don't know. When I go as a tourist, I don't see any huge signs of what was going on. It's amazing what's going on. And then when I saw that you saw Hanna Skandera, it's interesting that she was in my Leadership New Mexico class, and she was very interesting person to have in there. But just thinking back to that time when she was education secretary, we were doing a lot better. And they proposed a lot of plans that would have made New Mexico even more better. To coin an education phrase, but we don't want to get better in New Mexico, and that's been the mantra, not officially, but by action. We're not going to do anything to make education better. We're happy just the way we are.
Yeah, and definitely want to talk briefly about that. But of course, New Orleans is probably one of the singular kind of cultural food places outside of New Mexico here. Obviously, a very different type of food grouping there, but certainly enjoyed a few
Yeah.
beignets out in New Orleans. But yeah, on the education front, Louisiana is one of the states that, like Mississippi, tended to be at the very bottom in terms of education. They, like Mississippi, broadly followed what Florida did. And when Hanna Skandera was education secretary, as we've alluded to on numerous occasions on this show, the legislature, controlled by Democrats even at the time, with Susana Martinez in the White House and in the governor's mansion, not quite in
The
the White House,
roundhouse.
the roundhouse. She, it wasn't that the Florida model had to be taken as the Ten Commandments from on high, but the Democrats essentially refused to engage with nearly any aspect of those proposals, and
Well, and to the point that they would not confirm her
right.
as Secretary of Education. They wouldn't even bring it up. It was one of those, they acted like she wasn't there to the extent possible. And it's very weird, and it's one of those things that the teachers union does things from time to time that you certainly can understand why they do that, but it was not like in this case they were asking them to do anything that was, in my opinion, as I see it, bad for the teachers, or if anything, it would be of empowering of the teachers, and yet, nope, we weren't going to do that because it came from Florida or whatever other reason. And really, I've never seen any policy fought harder on so many fronts as that one, and as a result, we're last. So we're last. We got what we wanted, and hopefully, we'll want something different in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and
More better. That's my.
more better.
That's my more. New Mexico education needs to get more better.
All right. Well, yeah, it's not that other states like Mississippi and Louisiana have done exactly what Florida did, or New Mexico was going to do what those states or Florida did. There could have been dialogue and collaboration, and it just didn't happen. And it would have been, I think, a difference maker for a lot of New Mexico kids if it had. So, you know, Hannah's somebody who I'm sure she looks back at that time a lot like a Vietnam veteran. In some ways, it was the best times that she was trying to work to reform the school system. But on the other hand, I'm sure it was a very traumatic experience, and she's not looking to go back anytime soon to that kind of, bare knuckles policy fighting. So, in other news, this is a really interesting one because I think it kind of highlights the way, especially New Mexico Democrats, see policy issues in the state of New Mexico. So we all know Santa Fe is a expensive town to live in. It's got that for a variety of reasons, but the mayor of Santa Fe has decided, Alan Weber, that the city's minimum wage, which is currently $15 an hour, is not enough. People can't afford to live there. So, what is he going to do about it? Not cutting taxes, cutting regulations, trying to tackle affordability. Not, you know, it would be great if more mayors did this, but mayors do have influence in Santa Fe. If they said, "Hey, we could cut taxes right now and start to make our city, our state more affordable." No, that's not Alan Weber's game. He's a hard left progressive Democrat. So, what does he want to do? He wants to take the city's minimum wage from its current $15 an hour to $17.50 an hour. Uh, Now, that is a relatively minor increase by overall standards. It's not a huge increase, and I'm not of the impression that it'll actually move wages in a dramatic direction. I mean, $15 an hour, that's tough to live in or around the city of Santa Fe unless you got a lot of roommates. $17.50 an hour is not going to make a huge difference. But the idea, I think the reaction, the sentiment that, hey, life is unaffordable. So let's artificially increase wages for certain people, not all people, but certain people at the low end of the wage scale. Just a very odd approach when you think about it in any logical, economics oriented way.
Yeah, Paul. If policies didn't have costs and benefits, this would be a great policy. Oh boy, yeah, let's everyone should make more. Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of things. Those at the low end of the skill set, including teen workers and the like. It's harder for them to get jobs, and I do think as policies go, this one seems to me to be pretty regressive, meaning the price of the things that tend to go up because of minimum wage increases is borne more by the low end income earners, not the high end income earners. So, it's one of those things. So here's a little help. We're going to help you $2 an hour than what you would have gotten otherwise. And over the course of the year, so what? 2080, so here's another $4,000 a year. And over the course of the year, prices and services and the things you buy will go up $6,000. And when you think of us, mention the politicians in Santa Fe, mention of us positively. So yeah, and it's one of those things. This is an issue. It's one of those that requires a couple of levels to think about, because when you just throw it out there, it's so positive in certain communities. Of course, we should raise the minimum wage. And, but when you look at the overall impact in terms of what it really does, the best minimum wage increases are those that are raised to a level that is already lower than most of the people getting the minimum wage. But,
Right.
Santa Fe, you need Santa Fe, it's the city different for a reason. And so then when we talk about, well, and these are the same people that are talking about, oh, Santa Fe is so expensive that their police officers can't live in Santa Fe. They have to live in Rio Rancho. Well, guess what? You're not giving them a raise. You're going to raise the prices on everything else in
Mm-hmm.
Santa Fe. Do you think that they're going to want to move there and live in your community? I don't think so.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, taxes could be cut, regulatory burdens, especially on land use and buildings and construction, zoning, and some of the historical preservation rules. Not saying obviously all of them, but they
We'll
could be
keep the
relaxed.
plaza, but it's
Right.
like, yeah, just because something has a piece of adobe more than 10 years old doesn't mean it's a historic building. But that's
Exactly.
just me.
Reforms to the GRT on housing, ending EV charging mandates, and some of this is at the state level. Obviously, taxes can be more impacted at the state level, but uh, again, Alan Weber has a big platform. He is one of the mayors of the largest cities in the state of New Mexico. He could easily advocate, and it would be a unique thing for a progressive mayor to come out and say, "Hey, the legislature needs to do some of these things." And interestingly enough, south of town there on Cerrillos Road, once you get towards the interstate, there's there's actually some land, more so in many ways than Albuquerque has available to do a lot of building. And there is building going on in that particular area, but certainly that would be a way to address some of these issues. But Santa Fe is never going to be a particularly affordable issue. It's a very popular place with a lot of people from across the entire country. It's got government, which artificially kind of gooses the wage and living standard situation for those who have those jobs available to them. And, it just is what it is. It's been a long time. Uh, People have been commuting up from Albuquerque and other places here in this town in order to work in Santa Fe. And that's just the reality of the way things work. So not raising the minimum wage further, that's not the way to address this particular problem. Any last thoughts on that, Wally?
Just if you're going to be the new incoming mayor, I guess that's one thing you won't have to deal with one way or the other if this passes. Also, it probably would be a short-term drag on the economy. So if you're going to be the new mayor and you're looking at actually the success of your city in terms of jobs and services and housing prices, probably going to move it the other way.
Exactly. All right. Another issue that just came up in the last few days. There was testimony before a legislative subcommittee by the athletic directors of both UNM and NMSU. Now, I think anybody who listens to this show regularly knows that you and I are both pretty significant sports fans. You, of course, the Aggies. Me, I just follow the college sports teams and root for both of them, unless they're playing each other. In that case, I bow out. But this whole playing field, and we can't quite go into every single aspect of it, but suffice it to say that 20 years ago, there were college athletes who were receiving only modest financial benefits from their colleges and universities for their athletic endeavors, and they wound up being suspended, Heisman trophies being stripped from them, programs being put on probation or worse. And now, above board, you are seeing money flowing directly from colleges and universities to those athletes. In fact, it's called NIL, name, image, and likeness. And universities even have a budget. They can now pay up to $20.5 million annually to college athletes. And I've got news for you if you're not aware. It's not the curling team or the tennis team or the cross country team where that money is going to. It's predominantly men's, and that's a whole different Title IX conversation, but men's football, men's basketball.
As opposed to women's football, which is soccer, but yes.
Yeah. So a lot of money involved. And what these two ADs were essentially testifying about is we need more money. Well, in New Mexico, whenever you need more money, it's kind of like the old line about robbing banks. Well, where do you go? You go to the legislature. And, without coming out and saying it, the athletic directors certainly seem to be, as was a bill introduced this last legislative session, to essentially pump more money from the state into specifically athletic department budgets to help, maybe not $20.5 million, but significantly upgrade the amount of money that these universities can spend. So, Wally, take it from there.
Well, it's one of those things. NCAA Division I basketball and football are now, by any objective standards, professional sports. So we don't like to think of it that way. And, they are professional sports, and they're not in the sense of like in baseball where you have like AAA and the farm club systems that are controlled by the major teams. No, these are standalone entities that have their own revenue, their own expenses, and it is interesting. It's an interesting blend of capitalism and kind of donations that do this. So, you've always had the Lobo Club that would do facilities. And now if you were in a bigger football kind of state than New Mexico, there's a lot of money that the boosters are throwing for NIL, but not in New Mexico. We just don't have as many private businesses here. We don't have as many alumni that are successful, although we do have some. And so therefore, yeah, it's up to the legislature to fill the gap, or otherwise, if they don't, then our football and basketball programs will diminish to the point where it won't be worth being in Division 1 anymore. They'll probably be a Division 2 school. And the weird thing, you know, college athletics, how it is done today with what the mission of colleges are, which is education a distant second and research and government money a primary first. To throw in athletics into that mix, it's reminds me of the tannin wash from Cheers. You're putting together a couple of business models that you would never thought would be there, and so strange things are going to happen. And right now we have a lot of money in the state. We can afford to do many things. We can actually afford to do almost anything that we would want to do in the state. We just can't afford to do everything. And it's going to be interesting to see where this one falls, because the other group that has tended to pay for a lot of athletics is the student fees. They take a lot of the student fees. So I'm there at UNM getting a business degree, and I pay a big chunk of fees that's going to the athletic department. And if I'm, so it's one of those things that it college athletics is almost like having a horse racing business. No amount of money is ever going to be enough. You're always going to be seeking more sources of it. And this next generation of college athletics is going to be interesting to watch in New Mexico and across the country. We know how the top 20 schools are going to do, but we are not that in New Mexico. State and UNM are not that. And so how will we fare, and how much money do we have to be, how good?
Yeah, and just for the record, SB, I believe 268 was introduced last session. It was $1.5 million to each college, each university, each of the two big ones. We oppose that, not so much, although certainly we have concerns about, is this the way that government should work? But the problem is that it's a slippery slope, and like so many areas of government, once you start with $1 million or $2 million, then you wind up at $10 and $20 million, and it gets out of control very quickly. There were a few quotes. This is from the Albuquerque Journal article from Senator Nicole Tobiasen, a Republican, and I reached out to Senator Tobiasen, and we're going to eventually have her on the podcast. But just a couple of quotes from the Albuquerque Journal piece that highlight some of the issues we have. When you say we have a $15 million gap for UNM, I think over the next several years, that gap will only continue to grow and we will struggle, Tobiasen said. And we have one of the best universities, I think, in this country with such an amazing and rich culture. We deserve to really take a deep look at this topic and figure out, how do we support UNM athletics, specifically football, and the same with NMSU. She added that $2 million for NMSU was really nothing in the grand scheme of the state's budget, and even the $15 million gap for UNM isn't a huge ask. And that's right, it's not a huge ask at this point, but the two problems I have with it are, one, where does it end? And secondly, it is clearly done in other states, and by other states, I include, we just talked about Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, all those states. Among the things that are different, we have a lot of similarities socioeconomically. We do not have a football factory type college or university where they sell out 80 to 100,000 people every single weekend. And it is easy for those universities, at least the big ones in those states, to come up with plenty of corporate sponsorship in order to pay not just for their own programs, but oftentimes covering full freight for other colleges and universities. And it's much more kind of a self-contained problem. Well, you come up with the NIL money. You're the ones with 100,000 people in the stands every single weekend. That's a much more doable proposition. When you're the Lobos and you're getting about 16,000 a game, and
100,000 a season instead of a game.
Exactly.
I am not dissing them. It's just it's a different level.
Well, the difference is that the schools like UNM and NMSU under this new model are going to be especially challenged. There's no fair playing field. It's never been a fair playing field, but it's only going to get more and more skewed as a playing field. So it's going to be incredibly challenged for the NMSUs and UNMs of this world to keep up.
Paul, and when you were talking about this, what popped into my mind, and I'm glad you're sitting down because I would hate to see
Uh-oh.
you stumble if I bring this up, is it has a lot of it has a lot of similarities with our film subsidy program.
Yeah.
So, okay, we need this money because we want this to do good, but it just keeps going up and up and up and up. And then here's the other thing is that as if this system continues and develops, there's no guarantee that even if we keep raising the amount of money we put into that, if other schools and the system as a whole is raising it faster than us, it won't even be effective in keeping us where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but this is a game with a lot of money at stake, and we are definitely the tail of this dog. So we are not the leader of how these things are working nationwide, and we're not in a real strong position. And as you kind of alluded to, we haven't been in a super strong position vis-a-vis every basketball and football season for the last 50 years. There have been some notable exceptions where things went pretty well, but we have not been a perennial powerhouse at either one of the universities, for an extended period of time, like a lot of schools have been and continue to be.
Yeah, and of course, football is a very expensive sport. There's all kinds of issues and challenges. And, once upon a time, I said that they should combine their football programs because UNM and NMSU, because they simply, we're not competitive and we're not able to attract the kind of talent that was necessary. I don't know what the answer is, but I certainly don't think the answer is adding more money into the uh, tuition or the pot of higher education, especially in a state that already is a very heavy subsidizer of higher education. And obviously, where this money specifically goes may be different from other resources. Of course, we are subsidizing athletics through the state budget already. The question is, do we do more of that? And I say nay on that one. So, uh, found a interesting chart from the Visual Capitalist. This I put up on social media, and it shows the percentage of Americans by state who are on welfare, and it's specifically on income or food support. And among U.S. states, New Mexico is numero uno. 20% is the number. Interestingly enough, you'll never guess. Well, there's two, but one of the two, you'll never guess which state is tied for second in the top spot or among the top states, people on welfare.
Well, because it's not going to be one of the usual suspects, I'm going to guess Hawaii.
No, it is
Okay.
Oregon.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Woo.
So Oregon and Louisiana tied at 17%. And state of Utah way down at 6%, along with Wyoming. So, I put on Twitter that this is one of the main things that drives every other bad outcome in the state of New Mexico, and I firmly believe that because we have plenty of money, we have plenty of opportunity in New Mexico. If we worked on some of these poverty programs in a way to encourage work and not continued reliance on government programs, the state would be in much better shape, and we'd have more people trained and able to work in the state of New Mexico. But yet, states around us, Arizona's got 11%, Colorado's at 9%, Oklahoma at 15%, Texas at 12%. So we are really high up there in terms of our dependency on welfare. All right, moving on. The next thing I wanted to discuss with you, Wally, is a Santa Fe, New Mexican article about the state and its its efforts to expand broadband access. And this article, like I said, from the Santa Fe New Mexican, I'll pull up the specifics, but it's a very recent article here from Margaret O'Hara, August 30th. The article is entitled New Mexico Set to Expand Broadband Access with State Funds at Hefty Cost. So kudos, first and foremost, to the New Mexican for acknowledging a hefty cost. But this is a quote directly taken from the article that I thought was relevant. Expanding broadband is really expensive. Broken down by cost per connected premise, the price tag on these projects, broadband projects, can be eye-popping. For most projects, the cost per connection ranges from $1,000 to $7,000. Those costs grow closer to $20,000 per premise for some projects in Lincoln, Otero, Hidalgo, and Grant counties. And Wally, this strikes me as being a lot like expanding the canals in the latest days before the railroads really took off. Spending a lot of money on those pulled canal boats throughout the Midwest and the East Coast that once upon a time were seen as being likely avenues of commerce. And then the trains come along and whammo, they're going 60, 70 miles an hour while the canal boats pulled by horses are going 10 miles an hour tops. And it was pretty much no contest after that. And all that money was essentially flushed down the toilet. But I'm sure there's other examples. That's just one that comes to my mind.
Yeah, and another example, Paul, is that in the golden era of railroads in the United States, when there were a lot more of them than there are today, they would build spurs up to the ever smaller and smaller towns. And then the railroads realized, hey, that's not profitable. We can't make any money doing that. And so what did they start? They started the Greyhound Bus Company. So they here's the thing: when you list off those towns, they have some, or the areas, Grant County, Lincoln County, and others, they're very sparsely populated. And so here's the thing: what are they trying to do? How are they trying to do it? It sure seems to me like they're trying to get everybody on some sort of a fiber backbone or a copper wire connection, a hardwire connection, because you can't spend that much money per connection if you're to use Starlink or something like that. And Paul, before the podcast, I shared with you that I work on a couple of projects where we have team members all over the country and all over the world, and some of them live in some pretty remote places as their primary residence, and they use Starlink, and that's it works. It's not perfect. Believe me, they'd rather have a dedicated fiber connection. But for where they are and what they do, it works pretty well, and doesn't have a huge upfront cost, because the upfront cost is paid by launching the satellite into orbit, and you pay just a monthly subscription fee. And it seems to me, when I hear numbers quoted like that, I think we're maybe continue to do that one size fits all. Everywhere needs to be connected by copper cable or by fiber optics, and know that, hey, way the heck out there, it probably doesn't make sense, and probably will never make sense, to run those long lines. And this is all of the worst attributes without many of the benefits of, like, the rural electrification programs of years gone by. And back then, there was not an alternative to doing what we needed to do for electrification. But guess
I'm
what?
not sure there is today in terms of electrification. I mean,
Well,
obviously,
you can do battery. I mean,
sure,
if you're
right.
50, if you have to run a 50-mile line to your ranch,
Yeah.
you can buy a lot of batteries, and you're the only person out there. And
Sure, sure.
But so yeah, let's break this down. Let's not do one size fits all, because we're going to waste a boatload of money. So,
Well, I've got bad news for you. We're doing one size fits all.
we
Wally.
are. We're not. Oh,
Because
well, I just the numbers showed that.
Yeah.
Because you can't have a $10,000 or a $7,000 Starlink connection for a single residence. It's just not possible.
Yeah, and according to the article, in 2021, Congress passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, setting aside $42.5 billion for broadband investments. New Mexico is set to receive $675 million of that. Nearly 4 years later, however, according to the article, that money has not moved much. And then it talks about the legislature, and in 2021, the legislature set aside $70 million as an initial investment in the Connect New Mexico Fund. The legislature doubled down in 2023, adding another $124 million to the fund. And then, let's see. So, yeah, there's been some other state executed grants in 2024 totaling $57 million in state money. It goes on and on and on. And yeah, we would be much better off subsidizing Starlink connections rather than using this money to drive wire out to the very, very furthest reaches of New Mexico. It's just a reality. But government, once it latches a hold of something, in this case, the idea that everybody should have access to broadband, it becomes a self-fulfilling approach to things where just money is allocated on top of money, on top of money, and the solution is probably never going to be achieved. The final, we all have broadband, except for Starlink or some other systems in place. Those will ultimately just drive the entire cost structure of this to the point where even government is like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, yeah. And the other issue I'd like to see, I know more about this, and it's probably healthy, but are they running? How many of these connections are going to be underground buried versus on power poles and the like? And so there's pros and cons about both. But in a place like Grant County, that's the rockiest county in New Mexico, Paul. It costs a lot if you're gonna bury any kind of line, whether it be power, gas, or fiber optic, you're gonna probably pay a lot of money because get out the blasting caps and the heavy equipment just to dig a small trench. So again, and we need to do that, Paul, because we can't have more power poles out there or more poles with wires on because they're ugly. So let's do it that way. So yeah, there's a lot of problems with this, and I have a feeling the state of New Mexico, we're a stubborn lot. We'll say uncle, but I don't think it'll be until we spend another 2, 3, 400,000 or $400 million more and not make much progress if we're going to approach it this way.
Absolutely. And I want to get a certification there. Rockiest county in New Mexico.
Just like around Silver City, it's built on rock.
All right.
So self-certified. I have one geology class.
Silver City and Detroit.
Yes.
Built this city on rock and roll.
But different kinds of rock.
Exactly. All right. Last up, another enjoyable, just you got to love the government spending our money. Albuquerque Journal, August 26th. Bernalillo County to receive more than $80 million to expand housing and homeless projects. The tweet that was sent out originally said that this was all going to be done to serve in excess of 1,000 people. 1,000 people for $80 million. That's not exactly a bang for your buck there. So what's the deal? This is the latest in an effort to address the homeless situation and provide housing and residence. Bernalillo County is expected to deliver 1,062 housing units and 925 beds for people experiencing homelessness. That's a lot, not a lot of bang for your buck either, especially in a world where it seems that the more we spend on homelessness and helping them out, the more homeless we have. I know that that is a shocking turn of events, but yes, if you continue to increase expenditures, and I don't understand the mindset, but I'm not in that group or even close to that group. Uh, there are some number of people, though, that seem willing to live the lifestyle for whatever reason that puts them on or close to the streets. And so the more we spend, the more we get.
Yeah, and there's ever increasing data that there is a percentage that they would take a home, but they're going to still want to use fentanyl. And if you can't use fentanyl where they're living, they will live on the streets, and they will tell you that. And so this quote homeless issue being solved by quote homes, that is that is it's just wrong. I mean, there are a percentage of people that affordability is huge. If you give subsidized subsidized housing, it's basically another welfare benefit. You can get some people off of the streets, but there's a huge amount where the fact about home affordability has nothing to do with that. And my opinion is, until we address that, this is again one size fits all. We assume that there's this monolithic homeless, and
Hmm.
there are drug addicts, there are people with mental illness, there are people that are on the run, and then there are some that are quote what we think of the poor single mother family with two kids that just can't make rent. And when we treat those all the same, we're probably going to get a let's just say less than effective success rate when it comes to doing that. And I do think that's what we're seeing in Albuquerque and other places that have tried this. Homes are the answer to all of these issues. And a lot of places have turned away from that because it got so bad. Albuquerque, unfortunately, has not.
Yeah, and of course it is not a monolithic homeless population. We had a presentation from Judge Glock, a speaker who talked about the homeless issue a couple years ago at an event. And, obviously, if somebody is suffering temporarily or, has children or some kind of issue, that is a different story. But there are a lot of people, I dare say a majority of people, certainly the hardest core so called homeless, who suffer from at the very least drugs and some kind of mental disorder, and they're not just going to willingly go into any facility. Now, my view is you either are willing to clean up and get off drugs and take your meds, or you don't deserve and having the state make or county make housing available for you is not going to solve anybody's problems. And you've got to keep them out of camping on public spaces and make sure that they are not living, in places that the rest of the people who pay taxes and live in the city of Albuquerque or Bernalillo County uh, want to use. And if there's some way to accommodate some number of them, so be it. But 83,000 $83,000 a person is a lot of money, or $83 million a person. I'm sorry. Uh, it's a lot of money. Wait, 83,000 each. Yes, my
Yeah,
math is wrong.
and Paul, this is not a zero sum game. If it's one of those from a societal point of view, every person living on the street that would inconvenience the people around them were getting a benefit equal to that, then there might be, and I don't think there would be, an economic argument. But the point is are we really helping the mentally ill and the drug addicted to continue their life on the streets? And you know, again, Judge Glock, and I've seen other studies, I've seen other commentators, I've seen people that go out there amongst them. Albuquerque's a good place to be a drug addict. They like doing drugs here because they're relatively well treated, and it's hard for people who aren't addicts to understand. But they're like, yeah, It's not the best living on the street, but I like doing drugs. So this is where I live.
All right. Well, unfortunately, that's where we will leave things.
On that high note,
Yeah. Well, $83 million for 1,000 people. That is incredible.
yeah,
So,
80,000 a person. That's a lot of money.
yeah. All right. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.